He has actually taught in countries such as Botswana, Ghana, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Ghana, Tanzania, Mexico, Sweden, and of course he has also extended his facilities to Ugandan schools as well. So that is where we are going to be having our topic of concern this morning, and maybe as a parent, a teacher, and as a student, you will learn something or pick something this early morning. A very good morning, sir, and thanks for joining us today.
It's a good morning. It's a pleasure being here this morning again.
All right. And of course, the pleasure is ours to have you for the second time in just a span of very few days. Looking at assessment, I have mentioned assessment and how schools have normalized it lately. What should the parents or teachers know or understand about assessment?
Thank you so much, moderator, for that question. Teachers should know that assessment is purposely given to give feedback to the learners about the learning process that has been taking place.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And when you talk about learners, that means it is the duty of a learner to make sure that at least they have something in mind from what they've told, what they've learned. Mm-hmm. A couple of times we have issues with our learners who go to school simply because they have exams at the end of it all. So our education sector is actually structured around learning, cramming, and then you write the exams, writing things that you studied in class. How different is that from assessment?
Well, like you've put it, last time I was talking here about the nature of education that we have in Uganda,
yes,
which is majorly teacher-centered, and we call it traditional way of learning. And the challenge that we have with our education system is that what we focus on mostly when it comes to assessment is the standardized nature of assessment activities that are given to the students. But these assessments that are given here limit what we expect these learners to portray at the end of the year or the unit that is being given. So what we expect with assessment is that, one, assessment should be used to inform the teacher on the teaching methodologies that are used, whether they're effective or not. Assessment also helps the learners to reflect or monitor how their learning is progressing. Then it also informs us. Now, when I refer to us, I do not mean the teachers or the students, but all members of the society. Because if I'm a parent, I need to know how my child has been performing in school.
True.
So assessment does not only imply giving questions to students, asking knowing what they have learned in class or during that year, but it has a broader...
Okay. Yeah. And in your observation, do you think teachers really understand what assessment is in our country and why assessment of students should be done?
Well, in Uganda, the teachers do understand what assessment is, basing on what they are expected to produce in schools.
Okay.
Last time I was saying that what the purpose of education is in most of the parts of the world is not what is demonstrated here in Uganda. Here, assessment is considered effective when the students are able to sit for an examination or a test and they all score highly. But that's not what learning should all be about.
Well, you've actually taught in all these schools and rather these countries. There is always an issue in relation to how their curriculums are centered and how ours are, or in regards to structures, really. So by the look of assessments, when you look at how is the assessment normally done in most of those schools, and is that the same way some of our schools here in Uganda, especially, let's say, the international schools that are having, that are using the, for example, the Cambridge curriculum per se, is that the same way we are running our assessments?
Not at all.
Okay.
Why do I say this? I have enough experience with the traditional learning style I'm talking about, because this is what I went through. Then I also have a vast experience in the international curriculum I'm talking of. I've had the opportunity to teach the IB program, International Baccalaureate, for quite a number of years. But when you look at the assessment, that goes is completely different.
Okay.
Here we are looking at a child scoring 80, 90, whatever, and we give the grade that we can give. But that's not all what assessment is all about. When you look at some of the theories that are used in learning. There is the theory of the Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay.
Here we look at the three domains of learning. We have the cognitive, the affective domain, and the psychomotor. Cognitive deals with the human intellect. The affective deals with the emotions and how students react to situations. Then the psychomotor deals with the body, physical movement and now when it comes to Uganda here, because like you've referred to those international schools, for them they look at all these aspects and the learners are assessed in all those aspects. But here in Uganda, it's only the cognitive domain that we focus on. And even with the cognitive domain, because when you look at that Bloom's taxonomy, it has got, that hierarchy has got 6 levels. We have the first 3 that are the lower thinking capacities.
Okay.
Then we have the last 3, which are the higher order thinking skills. Now, in our system here, we only focus on the lowest, which is remembering facts and probably comprehension, the first 2. So you realize that even the 3 domains that we are talking of, we only cater for one, the cognitive one, and even this cognitive one, we do not address all the 6 levels of learning.
Okay.
So what happens in, for example, in an international school, when a child comes to class, there are different strategies the teachers use to assess the learners, and one of them is observation. So it's not about the child sitting for an examination at the end of the term or at the end of the year, but assessment starts at the beginning of the day one. In fact, what my teachers probably may not be aware of is that in assessment we have got 3, but I've interacted with the most educators and they've always given me 2. They talk of formative assessment and the summative assessment. But there is one which is very crucial, the diagnostic assessment.
How is that?
This happens at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the unit, because we said that learners learn best when they connect new knowledge to the existing knowledge. So it's very imperative that when you go to class to teach, you need to ascertain how much background information a learner has on the concept that you are going to introduce. So diagnostic assessment is very important. Giving in tests, or they could be in form of quiz, Kahoot, or verbal questions to know that the topic I'm introducing to the learners, at least they have some background. That helps us to differentiate when you're going to plan for your activities for the students. And that's one of the mistakes that are made in our country here. A teacher goes to class and assumes that all these learners come from the same background, which is very wrong.
So that means they're all supposed to be having the same capacity to keep information.
And that's another challenge with our examinations here. You realize that, for example, at O level, the government is going to sit about 600,000 students. But all these students are going to be given the same questions, same type, requiring them to answer in the same way. Yet the learners are not the same.
Oh, and well, there's also another key issue of concern. We've talked about this same issue before we even went on air, whereby we have parents in Uganda that are a little bit more biased about the international schools that we have in the country. In Uganda today, we do not have quite a number of those. We have very few, simply because they also come to they also come at a cost, of which not all parents in the country are financially well to sustain or to be able to fund their children to these particular schools. Now, when you look at the enrollment of the new curriculum, assessment is one of those key priorities under the curriculum, where students have to be assessed by their teachers to see how they are performing, how they are coping up with the various topics and subjects that they're actually doing. Looking at our international schools, they've actually been good at doing this assessment. Are we, with your observation, what is missing?
What is missing, if I may go back to the concerns that you've said the parents have, it is true. Some parents have a very negative perception about these international schools. And I will give an example of, I had a brother who never wanted to hear anything about international schools. But I have always told people, when I have my casual discussions with them, and that example relates to when you mention that you want to take your child for education, maybe outside the Uganda, or is going somewhere overseas. Most parents here think that when those children go there, they get spoiled and come back. I have always told people that's not true. The only reason, or the reason why such things happen is one. A child who has never moved from my village, deep in Busia, gets a chance to go to UK for education.
They have a scholarship.
They have scholarships and whatever. This child has never boarded even a taxi from Busia to Kampala.
He's going to a new first world country.
Exactly. He's maybe boarding a very posh plane and those kinds of things. When this child goes there,
so he's living in his fantasies.
Yes, that excitement that child has. He's thinking of, when will I ever go back to Uganda and I narrate to my friends.
So he has to
experience
create all the memories.
Yeah. I do ask parents that, is it possible that we can expose these children to some of these things?
At a very tender age.
Yeah, when they don't see some of these things new. The negative perception the parents have about international schools, one, I'll give you. When a parent walks into an international school setting,
yes,
they will find children in the pitch playing, in music doing this, then they'll come up and say,
what
these
are they
schools
doing?
are not teaching.
True.
The children, you go there, they're just playing. But I want to tell you that an international school, a serious international school, will consider a PE lesson as important as a chemistry lesson. I told you that we have got 3 domains of learning, the affective, cognitive, and psychomotor.
Okay.
Think of a situation where they only restricted maybe Mbappe, that you, nothing to do with the sports and whatever, keep him in class.
Where would he be?
Yeah, up to, because universal age is about 21.
True.
That means he would stay in the school up to 21 years, goes to university, maybe he acquires those skills. I have a very good example which sometimes gives me concern.
Okay.
We have got this younger kid here called the fresh kid. Everybody appreciates the
talent he has,
the musical intelligence that child has. I appreciate the fact that should I call them the sponsors, wanted to put him in a formal school setting such that he can further his. But I am very much concerned if that child's talent is being
prioritized as much.
Exactly. Because I know where that boy studies. And I've worked there. I have not noted how many number of music lessons this child is given a week.
For him to, to bring out his best.
Yeah, exactly.
Talent-wise,
yeah,
because this is where he's going to be after school.
Yeah, so for us, because our emphasis on a child passing well or developing in numeracy and literacy, so we think when that boy goes to school there and he's able to write well, he's able to do math well, that's enough. I agree that boy should have been put in a formal school the way he has been, but there must be opportunities for that child to exploit his musical intelligence better than what he does.
The last time you were here, we had a concern in relation to use of textbooks and how they can be important in assessment. Yeah,
thank you so much. There is a respected parent who called and asked about, in fact, his concern was there are inadequate textbooks in relation to this new curriculum that has been introduced. But what I just want to inform our viewers is that when you're talking of learning, the issue of using textbooks is not something that we must overemphasize. And this is the reason.
Okay.
In our IB program, we do not encourage reference to materials always to be the use of textbooks. We need these students to vary their sources of information, because when you use a textbook, it's not a primary source of information.
It is just a reference.
Exactly. And we are encouraging, if we want these students to be good researchers, well, let them use textbooks as a tool, but there are other things. Why don't they make trips? You want to investigate about something, why don't you invite a guest speaker? And that is the beauty with our internationals that I was telling you. I'm in class, I'm teaching about maybe the reproduction, for example, and I'm going to discuss something to do with maybe the female reproductive organ or something of that kind.
True.
But I have a parent of my child who is a gynecologist. This person is more experienced than I am, much as I'm a teacher.
So inviting them over.
What's wrong with inviting this person to come
give
in
these
and give
young men and young girls and boys a clear picture?
Yes, I'm in school teaching, but I move around and I realize that my friend here in the next class, he has taught this concept very well, or he has managed the class very well. So there's nothing wrong with me going to that class, inviting him to come to my class. Or when I'm free going to his class and I sit, then I observe, I see how he does it. But for us here, if you do that, you go and ask the head of school that I feel you are more competent in this, then you They will ask, how did I employ this person if he's not? That's the challenge that we have here.
Okay.
We must cooperate, we must collaborate when it comes to teaching, learning, and assessment that we are talking about here.
Let's look at our Ugandan assessment for schools who are already doing it, or the teachers who are already doing it. How relevant is it to our current society today?
The relevance is very minimal. And like I said, these are standardized tests. Standardized tests do not give a clear reflection of what the child's potential is.
Okay.
I will give you an example. What we do in our international setting is, if I'm going to class, in fact, the 3 assessment that I talked of,
okay,
formative assessment is more important even the summative. For us here, we look at the end product.
Instead of focusing on the
the process,
key.
Where has the child come from to get this?
Okay.
This is what happens, for example, in our school. When we are teaching a concept, there are so many things that we assess. How the child collaborates, how the child puts in effort, how the child presents the research findings that gets, and all this data is collected. Now, there's something that we call a portfolio. Students create their portfolios, and these portfolios grow. A child can move with his portfolio from early years up to high school. It's something that grows. Now, what happens in a portfolio? A student will create a file and say, I want to make a selection of the work that I'm going to include in my portfolio. And this activity should be in 3 forms. 1,
okay,
the one that the child has performed the best, the one that has performed averagely, and the one has failed. I can say that. Now, the school has a day called the portfolio day, where we have the 3-way conference. It's the teacher, the learner, and the parent. So when we meet, that day it's the student to do the talking. The child brings out the portfolio and says, this is my work I've been doing throughout the semester or the term. Then a parent will ask, why have you chosen this work here?
Okay.
This is the work I did best. Why do you think you did this best? Now the child starts reflecting. I did this because I concentrated, I collaborated, time was enough for me at home, and those kinds of things. Even where the child performed the lowest needs to explain why. You reflect on it, then you set the goals.
You know, we have an issue when you bring in the parents. Gets me to my other question. With our current education system, in most cases, parents during their holiday time interactions with these children don't ask a lot of questions in regards to education. First, they will ask, "Where is your report card?" And once the report card is here, the parent will pay more attention on how the child performed in this subject, why did the child fail, and all that. And in most cases, parents are more curious simply because they are paying in the money and they feel like their money is going to waste. Now, this brings me to understanding, is there a way, or to asking rather, is there a way parents get into the context of assessment, and how can parents champion assessment right from home?
It's very minimal. It's very minimal in our traditional setting. But with the international, it is because, like I have told you, at the beginning of the year, a learner has to set goals, and the parent is involved.
Yes.
I have my child has got issues with the maybe data handling in mathematics.
Okay.
As a parent, I need to identify that. So I'll sit with my child. What are the problems associated with this? I'll identify them, I sit with it, then we set goals. Okay. That during this period, this is what we are going to work towards on. Because, like I was mentioning last time, learning does not only happen in school. Learning starts from home. Home, society. Now, yes, if a parent is not involved, one of the roles the parent has to, you need to provide support. And this support is in the form of logistics and time. A child comes home and you think, because he was at school studying, so at home doesn't have to do anything, you say, I don't want to see you with any book, or I don't want to see you engaged in anything that you do. And we always emphasize that learning that takes place should be something that helps a child to live in a society. Okay. So this learning that takes place in school, is there any action associated with that learning that happens? I'm going to give you an example of my kid who goes to school, and this I'm talking when she's 5 years. She goes to school and they are dealing with the recycling. She's taught the importance of what recycling is, the importance of recycling and reusing and that kind of thing. So having grasped the concept, she comes home. And early morning, it was always, because we're in a winter place, should open the tap. The first water that comes is very cold. But what most of us used to do is to open, it flows until the warm comes and we start taking a shower.
Okay.
So what she does, she goes and gets a bucket, she comes and opens the tap,
Okay.
this collects this cold water and puts aside. The mom asks, why are you collecting this water? She says, I don't want this water wasted because we have got flowers there. I want to use this water to go and water
The flowers.
So the child has translated what she has learned in school.
From the other side.
Yeah, in fact, she's helping the society because water is a scarce resource.
True.
So the question is our learning here helping our students to take responsible action?
Is it?
I don't think so. I was in the Middle East for about 4 years.
Okay.
If I ever saw rain, it was not more than twice. But not even a single day did we fail to have water. And those people don't have freshwater lakes. They get water from the ocean. Why is it that in Uganda, where you get rain for about 8 months a year, we have got so many engineers here. You go everywhere, engineers. What have they done to help us?
Nothing.
In this? They will say, you know, there is no money, there is no what. There is this gentleman called Peter Tabich. If you remember, I think the media must have covered him. Last year, I attended the Teachers Global Award in Dubai. The former State Minister for Education in Uganda was also there in attendance. Can bear witness. This gentleman called Peter Tabich comes from Nakuru, a very deep area.
Kenya.
He's a teacher, but he used to get the little he gets, he would use that money to support these marginalized families. And they would come up with very amazing projects. In fact, one of his groups went and competed, was it in Sweden or whatever, and it was the best. So when he went for the award in Dubai,
Yes.
you go to Google, anybody who is viewing can go to Google and write in Peter Tabich. He was the winner of that global award and he was awarded $1 million.
For his innovation.
Exactly. Deep from Nakuru. So this issue of saying, you know, for us, we don't have money, we come from the village, this was, I think it's about innovation and thinking.
Education assessment is a topic of discussion at this particular hour of the UBC Good Morning Uganda Extra. When we do return after the break, we have more conversations rotating around how the assessment system is a reflection of the learning parents are paying for. Not only that as well, looking ahead to the changes in Uganda's education sector, how can the teachers, parents and the students as well utilize all the facilities or utilize the opportunities they have to carry on with assessment. And hey, tell you what, more of those conversations are coming up, so stick around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
UBC is the national public broadcaster. We educate, inform, entertain, and inspire our audiences. You can watch us on free-to-air channel 001, DSTV channel 282, GoTV channel 371, Star Times channel 201, Zuku TV channel 20, and Azam TV channel 350. Even when your subscription expires, you can still watch UBC for free on your pay TV platforms.
A new dawn on Behind the Headlines with me, Timothy Nyangweso. Every Wednesday, live in our studios in the heart of Kampala, we have conversations that have analysis, explanation, but not every truth is fact, and not every fact is truth. Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
Broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Did you know that the Union Jack differs from the current national flag of Uganda? The Union Jack, also known as the Union flag, is the national flag of the United Kingdom, whereas the Uganda flag is the national flag of Uganda. The Union Jack was used as the official flag of several British colonies, including Uganda, before they adopted their own national flags, while the Uganda flag was used in Uganda after gaining her independence in 1962. The Union Jack flag is created with the aspects of three other national flags: St. George's Red Cross of the Kingdom of England, St. Andrew's White Saltire of Scotland, and St. Patrick's Red Saltire of the Irelands. While the Uganda flag consists of 6 equal horizontal stripes of black at the top, yellow and red, with each color having a meaning. Within the middle is the grey-crested crane, which is the national bird for Uganda. The Union Jack has been in existence since 1606, when England and Scotland merged, but changed to its current form in 1801, when Ireland joined the United Kingdom, whereas the Uganda flag was adopted in 1962, when Uganda attained her independence. As the British Union Jack was being lowered down, the Uganda flag was raised up. You can't imagine the happiness that Ugandans got.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Every new day does bring you opportunities to learn something, a skill or getting information. You know, when a new day presents itself, you have to learn something new. It may be the same thing you learned yesterday, but in a different version, because learning or studying or growth never ends, really. You may fail to grow physically, or growth may physically stop to ideally show, but then how you grow mentally says a lot about you. Our conversation today rotates around assessment in Uganda, or the education assessment in the country. And we've been having all these conversations trying to understand how do teachers, how do parents and our students being assessed ably well so that they can ideally make sure that what they've studied in school can be reflected in society, or they can push it to society, and of which you get to realize it's very minimal. My guest this morning is Paul Bendera Ntalo, who is the director, Savannah Consultancy. He's also a teacher with an experience of 19 years of teaching schools in countries Botswana, Tanzania, Mexico, Sweden, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Ghana, and Uganda as well. So when you look at that, for a vast experience, trust me, you would love to hear from a gentleman like the one I'm having this morning. We were talking about use of textbooks. In Uganda today, we have teachers in schools, in the traditional schools, who normally write for the parents or for the students that next time you need to come back with this textbook. You need to come back with this book. But in most cases, because I've also passed through this particular curriculum of our local schools, I do know in most cases these textbooks are only used for a few topics. So we never explore everything within the textbook. So when you look at the use of textbooks as assessment, strategies, how best can we use them?
Thank you so much, moderator. Like I said previously, the use of textbooks is a good thing.
Okay.
But we should not over-rely on the use of textbooks. We must explore different sources of information. The disadvantage with using textbooks is that it limits the learner thinking. Because they are only going to follow the perspective of the writer of that book. That's why we want these learners to use different sources of information, such that they can challenge the information they get from one source. And the other thing is that for any effective teaching to take place, the learners must develop interest in what they're going to study. Now, you present a textbook to the learners, and this is what happens. You realize that all schools in Uganda, at maybe O level, when it comes to English, they could be using the same book. Even at A level, when they're doing literature, it could be one type of novel, which is very wrong. Because in learning, we say we must capture the learner's interests if we are going to engage them in the learning process. I had a very bad example when I was in primary, and those who went to primary with me at the same time will agree with me.
Yes.
There's this textbook that we're using, and it was called the Nile English course.
That's for English, eh?
Yeah, for English. The Nile English course had a story about, I think, was it hunting rabbits and whatever. And there were two parts, if I'm not mistaken. One was Inchuli Part 1, and the other one was Inchuli Part 2. The story was major about hunting. But sensibly, the issue of hunting is not of great interest to the females.
generation.
Yeah.
Or even, okay, maybe things are changing. Anyway.
Yeah, things are changing.
Yes.
Now, you are presenting a story about hunting to the girls who don't have a lot of interest in hunting.
And it's only the men who are paying more attention to
and
it.
you are forcing them that you have to read this and answer these comprehension questions. So that is where textbooks do a disservice to us.
Okay.
Now, moving from there, the questions that are asked when these learners are assessed, to me, I think sometimes they are horrible. I was looking at, I was in the village and my cousin did PLO last year. Now, you look at a paper, an examination paper, a national examination paper they have set. We call it science, that we are testing the science skills of a kid. They have drawn a fish, okay?
True.
They have put arrows on
To
the tail.
name the...
Yeah, the tail,
Yes.
the scales, the lateral line, and whatever. But my cousin in the village doesn't know these parts in English. But he knows all the parts. The tail in my language is called esive. The scales are called amakamba. The gills are called amalaha. This child knows, but doesn't know these
Them in
parts
English. In English.
So if the child leaves this without answering anything,
It's a zero for them.
yes, he's condemned that the child is poor in science. Truly speaking, is naming the tail of a fish science?
No.
Those are the questions we're giving to children, and we say we're testing them in this case. So I think something has to be done. Something has to be done when it comes to assessment. What questions are we assessing the learners? Are they conceptual questions?
Speaking of assessment and the questions that we're supposed to be asking while assessing these students, which core questions should we focus on? Now that we are trying to, we are trying to adapt to the new curriculum, and I believe teachers are finding a very difficult problem now in regards to making sure that they sink this new generation of children into the new curriculum, or even those students who started with the old curriculum now are supposed to be getting used to the new one. What are the focus, or what are the core values of assessment that we need to look at?
The questions should be provocative. They should provoke students to think.
Okay.
Let them be open-ended. These questions of, last time I was talking here, where I watched a certain TV station, in giving a quiz to the kids who are going to sit for PLA, and they were asking them, name a place where ships are made. Really? Name in which continent? In which continent is Australia? Or which country? I think it was which country, which single country, I don't know, takes the entire continent, or that kind of thing. Do children really need to think here? What happens, if I may give an example, in our progressive learning that I was talking of? For us, for example, there is a program in IB, International Baccalaureate 1, called the PYP.
Okay.
At PYP, they teach transdisciplinary themes. And they call them transdisciplinary because we do not teach subjects as discrete subjects. If I'm a math teacher,
yes,
there's nothing I need to know in English. There's nothing that I have to know in science or whatever. But with the transdisciplinary, we borrow knowledge from all these subjects. So with those, there are key things that they look at. For example, if you have identified your transdisciplinary theme, for example, sharing the planet, what central idea are you going to ask students to investigate here? So we come up with a central idea, we come up with the key concepts. For example, I'm going to, if the central idea or the theme or the topic that we want the learners to talk about is about the solar system, what other concepts surround the solar system? So we are looking at the bigger concept, the key concept, then we have the related concept to this. We call them macro concepts and micro concepts, which relate here. Then, what exactly do we want to look? Now, here, the teacher is going to come up with provocations. We call them provocations because they trigger thinking in our learners. So the teacher has to identify, for the learners to be able to investigate this, what questions, what open-ended questions do I need to set such that they can guide these learners to investigate well.
Okay. Now, also, I need to know, this assessment system, you've mentioned of how important it is and why we really need it. But does it as well also give us a reflection of what the parents are paying for?
In fact, it doesn't. Like I told you, if I am sick for 6 months in a year,
yes,
and I attend school for 2 months, I sit for an examination and I fail.
Then
Is my failure attributed to the poor health I had or my inability to answer this? That's where the problem is with our examinations. Now, with the international baccalaureate I'm talking of, they have a diploma program which is A level, like senior 5 and 6. They have got subjects grouped. We have group 1 up to group 6.
Okay.
Then their core subjects. We have creativity, action and service, that is CAS. We have extended essay and theory of knowledge. Those ones are universal to all students that take that. But now what happens here with their assessment, I go to class and I teach for about a month or 2 months. I've done diagnostic assessment to know at the level where the level at which the learner is. After some time, I've taught, then I assess. Has there been any improvement or not? Now, basing on that improvement, this is what they call predicted grades. So the teacher sits and says, student X, I expect him to get a B in my subject in math. Now, you work towards that. Now, what IB does, at some point, IB sends evaluators from the headquarters in Cardiff, UK. They will come to school and they'll go through this child's work and they also compare. Now, at the end of the year, you are a teacher who told this student and you predicted that the child will get B. If at the end of the year the child gets F, there is a problem with you as a teacher also, because you need to know the circumstances surrounding this. If these factors remain in place, this child must get B, but nothing has gone wrong. Why has the child gotten F? So you know there is an issue. Now, what happens with them? Because some of these programs are very expensive. You've been assessing these children, you see what they do, the activities they go on. When you compile all this, you are able to grade and know that this child gets. So the external examinations that come in will have a weight of maybe 25%, but in addition to what the child has been. So assessment should be ongoing. For us, we focus at the UNEP, PLOE, O level, UCE, USE, I don't know, is it UACE, those kinds of things. But if you want to give the true reflection of the learner, you must go back and look at the process. Where has this child come?
Okay.
That's why there is this critical issue. And I think it's very common in our schools here. You take two children come to class. For example, they're joining university and they're doing some course. One passed very highly.
Then the other didn't.
Yeah, one didn't. One came with maybe 18 points.
Then
this one is on private, is doing maybe 10 points and whatever.
Yes.
Now, if at the end
course
of the semester, yes, doing the same course, if at the end of the semester, this child, if you see this child has maybe progressed with 10% and the other one progressed with 2%, if you are a serious evaluator, this child who progressed with 10% has developed more than the other one.
Who came with the better results.
Exactly. But for us, we look at the other who got the highest mark.
And then
we think that is the one who has performed very well. That kills our learning. We need to look at this child, where has this child moved? If a child came to class with 0 and has got 20, this one came to class with 60, has got 62, who has progressed further?
True.
Yeah, much as the other one still has a lower grade, but when you look at the percentage growth, is higher than the other one. So in terms of development, this child is doing better than
the other.
Yeah.
And I think with all parents we can agree on this particular issue. We've seen students who have performed so well at PLE having four aggregates, then they go on to O-level, perform well, maybe 18-10 or 10 out of 10, and that is senior 4. Then surprisingly, when they reach A-level, things change. The other who got maybe 48 or 36 performs better or starts growing into the better candidate, if I'm to put it in that way. So I think this is where the assessment part comes in. But Mr. Paul, I've seen you do have a textbook, you do have a book. I don't know. The viewers would wish to understand what you're carrying with you this morning.
Well, when I came back to the country, I had a lot of concerns from the teachers. They were complaining, well, the government has introduced a new curriculum, but we have got challenges. We don't know where to go. We don't know how to implement this. We don't know what assessment is all about.
Okay.
So I sat down and authored this book. It's competence-based learning. It's a shift from tradition to progressive. I purposely gave it this title because I want us to move from the teacher-centered method to the learner-centered method of learning. That's why I came up with this book. I've talked about a lot of things when it comes to assessment, teaching styles, designing the curriculum, evaluating the curriculum, and those kinds of things. Yep.
Okay. And if anyone wants to at least have this particular book, where do they find it? How can they find you? So if you are to clearly give us more of those details as well.
Well, I am the best thing right now. We have gone digital, and we have social platforms that we use. I am on Facebook, and my account is Paul Ntalo.
Okay.
Yeah, paulntalo@gmail.com. I've found on Facebook, but I can still also share my number, which is 0788 765693. I repeat, 0788 765693.
Okay. That's so your number as well. And he's also a director of Savannah Consultancy. So as we are summing up with our conversation this morning, rotating around assessment of students in schools, what are some of those don'ts in assessment where a teacher or a parent what are those things that they should not do, regardless of circumstances?
Well, I first want to encourage the parents that they should be fully actively engaged in their child's learning.
Okay.
And the problem we have in Africa is when it comes to teaching and learning, the parents say, I'm not a teacher, so I don't have to get involved into this.
As long as I'm paying.
Yeah, as long as I'm paying and whatever. I was discussing with somebody, we had some conversation, and I was saying, any serious curriculum comes from the concerns of the parents. Because we, the parents, are the ones who know what we need our students to be. So we must guide. Let us not sit behind and say, because we have the National Curriculum Development Center, so they should decide everything for us. No. Let us engage them. We have got here the parliament, and I'm impressed that there is a committee in charge of what are these committees still doing at this time of the year or the period. Students are still being assessed using closed questions. Really? Something has to be done.
Where you're supposed to go and write an exam and leave your books outside.
Yep.
Okay. Your final remarks, though.
My final remarks are that let the teachers continue reading. We have a lot of literature on the internet. I'm very happy that most teachers these days have got at least a smartphone. Let us not tie ourselves in what we know and whatever, but let us try that as much as we can. And I also implore the government or the bodies responsible for assessment in this country. They need to do a lot of research and see the odds associated with our current assessment system, such that we can move where other countries have reached.
Oh, well, I also forgot to ask, I think this should be the last. Have you got the chance to do external facilitation for local schools as well here in Uganda?
Yeah, well, I've tried to approach a number of schools, but like I've told you,
yes,
there are schools I have approached, and I say, is it possible that I can share with? But the question is on time.
Okay.
Schools tell you we don't have time.
They have to beat their curriculum
from January 1st up to the day when the kids sit for their examinations. There is no time.
There is no time for.
There's no time for professional development. How do you run a school without professional development courses? How?
Wow. My guest this morning has been Paul Bendera Ntalo, who is a director at Savannah Consultancy. Many thanks for joining us this morning. We're really, really humbled to have you. What a conversation we've been having, really. And this conversation is one that is collectively encouraging all of us to take part in the education system in the country, whether you're a parent, you're a guardian, a teacher, even a student, under any capacity you're in, you definitely need to take charge of this. We are in third term, and of course, when we are in third term, you get to realize that most of the parents will be looking out to how their students will be performing in PLE, UCE, USCE, and also further to see how maybe those who are going to be sitting promotion exams, how they'll be performing. But let's take some time as well to see how best these students have been performing in regards to assessing them as a parent or a guardian, and then also look at the teachers to see if the child is developing in one way or the other. You've been watching Good Morning Uganda Extra. This is UBC TV. I do urge you to stick around to the national broadcaster as more programs are coming up. But as of now, I'm Joram Paul Sonko. Good morning and goodbye for now.
Live